May 29th is simply the day that constitutionally has been set aside for the handover of power from one leader to the other, from one political party to the other, from one regime to the other, from one government to the other, peacefully. So it used to be called a Democracy Day until this government changed it, that it is no longer a Democracy Day. It is just an ordinary day for handover, when they shifted the Democracy Day to June 12th. So May 29th is very important in our history. But like you said, there are things that are the way they are according to the law, not the way they ought to be. The ideal thing would have been that all cases should be sorted out before swearing anybody in. Because once somebody is sworn in, the abuse of executive powers can make the person to influence the process of litigation. Because, you know, whoever is the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So it then means that unscrupulous leaders, which Nigeria cannot be exempted from, can manipulate or forcefully try to intimidate the participants in the delivery of justice. So that's the ideal thing. Unfortunately, the framers of our constitution never anticipated that we will get to this level of electoral banditry, electoral armed robbery. So, because we were governed by military rule for a long time, where they would say, sit down, everybody sits down. They were contemplating a disciplined society in line with that, unitary system of government. So when we entered democracy and this situation of election rigging and manipulation setting, we now discovered that almost all the elections go to tribunal. And we now discover that the executive interference in the processes in court has always been obvious. One, the disadvantages. Once somebody is sworn in, he's going to use state resources to prosecute his own case. No doubt. While the opposition will be struggling to get resources to prosecute their own. Two, he becomes the head of a branch of government. There are three arms of government. So he has the bargaining power with which he can use to flog the other ones to fall in line, because he's holding the purse. So there are other reasons. You can, for instance, dangle it in front of members of the Court of Appeal. If you play ball, we'll upgrade you to the Supreme Court. A lot of things. Because, the president will have to appoint any justice to the Supreme Court subject to approval of the National Assembly. So he has a lot of tools in his basket with which he can bargain in a corrupt society to influence the process when it comes to power. So there is genuine agitation that cases should be completed before swearing in. In Kenya, they are doing it. Some other jurisdictions, they are doing it. But sadly, in Nigeria, the current provision does not stop anybody from being sworn in pending the conclusion of the case. And the time limit to conclude the case does not stop before inauguration. And then, unfortunately, again, our elections go into tiers of and levels of power of the judiciary. So even if you finish from the Court of Appeal, you will still have to go to the Supreme Court. So when you finish 180 days, that is the number of days that is allowed to finish the case in the Court of Appeal. When you hear 180 days, it does not mean they must finish it. It means they must not exceed it. So it does not mean if they give judgment tomorrow, you say, no, they have breached the law. No. It means they cannot exceed 180 days. Now, in the governorship, it is even worse. Before now, the governors stop at the Court of Appeal. But in Nigeria, because everybody wants to be part of the cake, they now have to amend the constitution so that the governors now will be reaching Supreme Court. So the governors are the only set of executives that their case goes to 3 levels of the judiciary. the Election Tribunal, Court of Appeal, and Supreme Court. So in the case of the governors now, instead of abridging time, they have enlarged time. And underneath all these things is corruption. Because people were beginning to scream that the Court of Appeal, they are more liable to be compromised than the Supreme Court. And that the governors stopping at the Court of Appeal, that a lot of judgments are questionable. If you remember the Tambuwal case, when Tambuwal was the governor, the case was supposed to end in Court of Appeal. We did not know how the Supreme Court dabbled itself into it and now issued an order arresting. That was where the word arresting the judgment of the Sokoto Son in KB. That was when they started doing the, that made the amendment of the Constitution to make their case to be ending in the Supreme Court. So, coming to the issue of whether swearing in is subverting the will of the people in accordance with the law, it is not, because the law does not forbid it. But in the case of, as in on moral grounds, it ought not to be. So our constitution ought to be amended, and that is going to be the next line of advocacy, so that the Supreme Court should have original jurisdiction to entertain the matter of the presidential election. And my eyes were open. The Supreme Court said they are a policy-making court. If they can dabble in and say we have jurisdiction for ordinary Naira redesign policy, which is an exclusive privilege and right of the federal government to determine, yet the Supreme Court say, because it affects Nigerians, we cannot keep our eyes closed. And they assumed original jurisdiction. Original jurisdiction means that you'll be the first court of trial. That's the original jurisdiction. That's what it means.
Okay.
So the Supreme Court entered it and issued orders. Electing the president is the most important policy in Nigeria and in any country, because the security and welfare of the whole citizens lie on the shoulder of whoever is the president, because he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and the issue of security till now is on the exclusive list. So if this is the most important policy, the Supreme Court should assume original jurisdiction, so that it doesn't need to go to the Court of Appeal. It goes to the Supreme Court, and they should be able to determine it before somebody is sworn in. So presently, the judiciary can subvert the will of the people if they don't deliver justice. But the mere fact that they are not doing it before the person is sworn in, you cannot say that it is illegal. So the mere swearing in of the person before the court finishes is not going to amount to subverting the will of the people. But not delivering justice, whenever you now decide to give the judgment, is what will amount to subverting the will of the people. In the presidential election of 2023, it is obvious that the will of the Nigerian people was subverted. Now, the will of the Nigerian people is simply the sovereignty which the Constitution has said belongs to the people. Section 14(2)(a) is very explicit. If you take it from the subsection 1, it says Nigeria, the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall be a state based on the principles of democracy. People always forget the end. When they reach democracy, they thought it has finished. No. Principles of democracy and social justice. Anything done in Nigeria, any democracy done, which is not based on social justice, is not democracy. Now, social justice is the system of how a people organize themselves. Then justice is condition of being fair to all. So when you say social justice, you're talking about organizing your society in a manner that will be fair to all. So our democracy was meant to be a democracy that will be fair to all. And if you get to section 14(2)(a), it is hereby accordingly declared that sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom every government derives its powers and authority. You see? So any government that does not derive all its powers and authority from the people came in subversion of the will of the people. And the way people express or give power to any government in a democracy is by free, fair, and credible election. And that is why to date, the best definition of democracy is the one given by Abraham Lincoln, the former president, if not the best president of the United States of America. And he said, democracy is the government of the people, by the people, for the people. Of the people means that power belongs to the people. That's why one of the qualifications of anybody that you must be a citizen of Nigeria. That is of the people. Then by the people, meaning that it's the people that vote the person into power. Then for the people. The government is existing for the security and welfare of the people. And that is why Section 2B, subsection 2B of Section 14 says the security and welfare of the people is the primary purpose of government. Now, if your government is not derived, or if the power of your government is not derived from the people, the government will not owe the people security and welfare because they don't need the people to come to power. That is why most governments in the world, where the democracy and the will of people is subverted, they are always lacking security, they always lacking welfare. They use the money to feed the godfathers because the source of their power is not from the people, it's from the godfathers. That is why in America, where the vote of the mechanic is as powerful as the vote of the president, whoever is the leader needs to just maintain the welfare of the people and will be sure to become president. But in Nigeria, the people can vote, all of them, and one godfather somewhere will just use a phone call and say, this is the figure you will write. So they will prefer to use all the money they would have used on the people for that godfather. So the only way we can ensure that the security and welfare of the people will start mattering to the people in authority is to ensure that they come to power by the sovereign will of the people, demonstrated only through fair, free, credible, and periodic election. And I give you an example of Ghana. Since Jerry Rawlings introduced free, fair, and credible election in Ghana, their development has started rising. Their prestige in the Committee of Nations has started rising. Look at Kenya. Gradually, as they are getting their act together in democracy, their development, their prestige, their institutions are getting stronger. But look at Nigeria. We are going down. By May 29, this government is going to bequeath to Nigeria 77 trillion in debt. It's going to bequeath to Nigeria insecurity of people, 518 persons being killed in 6 years in Zango, Kataf alone. It's going to bequeath to you people scarcity of power, scarcity of water, scarcity of fuel. The 4 refineries, none is still working. Yeah, the private refinery that was started about 4 years ago, which they are saying the largest in the world, is almost coming to start
and even
working.
NNPC have got a share in it.
Good. And the 4 refineries, those to repay for 8 years, they are not able. And they have paid more than 30-something trillion, maybe, or 20-something trillion to foreign countries in the name of subsidy for what you're producing, or what you have the refineries. And they have spent billions purporting to repair the refinery, and nothing is working. There's no government on earth that will have that record, that will win election through free and fair election. But it happened in Nigeria. And above all, they want to bequeath a leader who himself needs to be repaired, like our refineries. He will campaign in the 36 states, one day in each state. And after that, he will go abroad and spend 34 days to be repaired. He came back and made 4 public appearances and had to fly back to France to be repaired. So everything the APC government wants to bequeath to Nigeria are the things that needs to be repaired, meaning they ended up destroying. Not one thing they can single out as they have performed well. Our economy is battered, needs to be repaired. The war against corruption is battered, needs to be repaired. Our election now, as far as 2023 election is concerned, is the worst in the history of Nigeria. The most costly, yeah, the worst. It needs to be repaired. And then the May 29th needs to be repaired. So let me pause for a while so that I can hear the contribution of people. So there's no doubt that the will of the Nigerian people has been subverted and is reflecting in every indices of development. More than 33 points, more than 63 persons in Nigeria are poor, suffering from one poverty to the other. No basic nutrition, no basic education, no basic sanitation, no basic employment. So I can go on and on. If you want me to describe, maybe along the time, then other people are asking questions, I will describe to you the procedure which INEC ought to have taken for the election, then the actual procedure they took for you to know that the will of Nigerian people was catastrophically subverted. That is why somebody in Adamawa can stand up when he does not even have the power to do it, to announce a winner and will tell you to go to court. He's borrowing a leave from what happened in February 25th. There's no way he could have had that the temerity to do that, if not that he has seen people do it.
Good evening.
And good evening, my brother Kenneth.
Good evening, sir.
Listen, I just heard today that the Labour Party said they need 7 weeks to present their witnesses and everything. Does it mean, can't they start from, because I heard that the issue of double nomination, which Tima had, is a problem, and also the 25% in Abuja. Does it mean we can't, or you people can't start from there? At least so as to stop this man from being inaugurated? Must we have to wait for the 7 weeks that the Labour Party asked for? Because we are all worried and rattled. And this is what we don't want. Nobody wants this. And it's about to happen. Even I heard today that they said mobile phones won't be allowed from Monday. How come? All this. Please, just let us try to give us something if we need to. We need to hope on something. We need to have something to encourage us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much on that. We'll quickly go to the next person. Let me see who the next person is. Paul. So go ahead and unmute yourself, please, Paul.
Good evening. My name is Paul. I just want to ask a question. This we know that these people will be sworn in on the 29th of May, and we know the way the Nigerian situation is. What they are waiting for is that after swearing in, they are going to scatter everything. They are going to destabilize our party, and they are already doing more now. So what are the plans in place? Because many of those that will go to the Senate and other House of Assembly, many of them will be either cajoled to join them, or even incentivized or set up. You know, because they're going to scatter everything, do everything, because they are not in the.
So give us a question. Your time is almost up. You say what are in place? In place for what? Give us that question.
That is the question. The question is by May 29. If following up.
But you have 6 seconds. If you explain, it's going to be over, and I have to cut you off.
So what are we going to do when they start after May 29? Because everybody is broken.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. So please, just to add a bit, please, just for whoever is speaking, try and get the question done. Let's have the question, then you can explain why you're asking that question or where you are coming from. Otherwise, while you're doing the explaining, we don't get to hear the question. And you can see our guest in the house is writing these things down and putting the questions down. Winston, please, can you go ahead and unmute yourself? Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Please, my question is, I'm actually worried about INEC refuse to release their this thing to Labour Party. Their, what do they call it? The electoral material they called the other day to give to Labour Party. According to Labour Party, they have not gotten up to 70% of it. And my question is actually, what is Labour Party doing since INEC refused to release it to them? And parliamentary INEC actually refused to release it to them. The little one they have, is it enough to prove in court that they actually won the election? Because everybody know that Labour Party won the election.
Okay, thank you so much, Winston. But Barrister, would you want me to take 1 or 2 more, or will you answer this ones now?
You can take 1 more.
Okay. Okay, so let me look at the list. Who is the next person? Did I take Prince Will now? Let me lower the hands. If you've spoken, please just lower your hand so that I'm not. I think Prince Will. I'm confused now. Prince Lee, did I take you?